So I spent a lot of time watching I Love Lucy growing up. The lore, as I understand it, is that my parents were watching Friends as it aired, but there were way too many sex jokes for a 3-year-old, so we switched to watching shows that were made before that kind of filth was allowed on TV. I had books about Lucille Ball, I had all the seasons and DVD box sets. I still have Lucy and Ethel Barbies still in the box out of respect. Like, I was all about this show, which made me a little anxious to watch Aaron Sorkin's, who was the Social Network guy's movie about them, because I was worried that it was gonna reveal that Vivian Vance was like secretly a grand wizard or something. And it didn't do that, but it also certainly wasn't fun. I mean, it wasn't meant to be fun, but like also this is one of the most famous comedies of all time, so like I was kind of expecting it to be fun a little bit. It covers a week in the life of Lucille Ball and her husband Desi Arnaz as they navigate the dual crises of people thinking she's a communist and it coming out that he was cheating on her, all while they're trying to put on their weekly show. And there are a lot of flashbacks to how their relationship started. Other characters include their co-stars playing their married friends, Buster Bluth as their executive producer, and Maybe as their plucky lady writer.
You guys know where I could get one of those gold necklaces with a T on it?
That's a cross.
Across from where?
When I was last watching Jenny Nicholson, I was similarly inspired to organize my thoughts/complaints into an algorithmically friendly numbered list. So, anti-communism. All right, here we go. Fresh out the gate, let's alienate conservatives right the fuck now. So we know that Aaron Sorkin is an old man, and an old white man at that. He doesn't see the need for a writers' union, interestingly. So it makes sense that he would hate commies as much as any other red-blooded American he runs into getting his $400 sushi at Nobu. And there are a few choice scenes where Desi talks about what he lost to the communists. When he and Lucy are fighting, he goes, "You did make a mistake signing up for the Communist Party because they took everything from me." But hypothetically, this isn't like a bad conflict for these characters to have. It feels like a fight that would have been true to who they were in real life. Lucy being a genuine registered communist in her young, idealist past, and the fact that communists would have been less than happy to welcome Desi back into Cuba, to put it politely. It really makes me ask a lot of very interesting, historically pertinent questions. Like, was Desi more conservative than his wife? Did her history make him uncomfortable? Was being on different sides of this really popular ideological battle something that haunted them? These are all really good questions. Unfortunately, the film does nothing at all to explore them. There was another scene very early in the movie that pissed me off more than that. It's when Desi is talking to William Frawley, the actor who plays Fred, and he's like the resident old fart of the show. And J.K. Simmons is like, "You're not a fucking commie, right? Because you know I hate the commies." And Desi talks about when he and his family were forced to leave Cuba. He talks about revolutionary groups raiding his house, and he says he didn't understand why, but they killed all of the family's animals, just as a testament to their ultimate depravity.
When the soldiers came for your family, how scary was it?
They killed all the animals. Yeah, not for food. They just killed all the animals. I still don't know why they did that. It's...
And my first issue is that he wasn't forced out of Cuba by Castro's communists. It was an entirely different insurgent group 20 years before. And while they might have been more liberal, hi Cat, do you want to come here so I can pick you up? Come on. We'll see if he, oh nope, he doesn't want to make an appearance. That's okay. And secondly, how to be delicate about this. Desi Arnaz and his family were forced into exile. They did lose everything. And, you know, armed conflicts are violent. People do a lot of bad stuff. But also, they were Cuban nobility directly descended from Spanish colonizers. When people were criticizing a Spanish Javier Bardem for playing a Cuban, he was actually defended because of the argument that he was actually more genetically similar to Arnaz than most of the people who lived in Cuba now. So yeah, this was a white European man, which means that he was a very wealthy, politically connected, white-skinned person of Spanish ancestry in a Latin American country, which isn't a good look. I'm not sure if you've read A People's History of the United States, but in the words of Ricky Ricardo, if your family came from Spain and is rich now, you've got some splaining to do. Oh my god, I just tried to find an example of you've got some splaining to do. It's a Mandela effect. He never says it. He says splain He says Lucy splain, but just the fact that I remembered it like that, am I a racist? Also, I'm sorry, but that bandana was my enemy during this editing process, and we're just gonna have to suspend our disbelief that I said everything right the first time, because my hair changes in between takes. Oh, did I learn nothing in school? Guess not. It's like the Cuban version of if you're rushing Tridel at Alabama State and the house mother is like, well, my family bought a farm in Georgia in the 1750s and now we're millionaires. And it's like, I wonder why that is, but we know why. I want to hold space in my heart for being sympathetic, but also when people say eat the rich, like this is what they mean. And I hate to say, oh, someone deserved to lose their house, but are there not some people in the world right now where you kind of want them to lose their house? Just because you're meeting someone on the other side of a revolution doesn't mean that they've always been right about everything. And I'm not saying it's a bad portrayal of Arnaz or his experiences, but there's just such a gravitas to this scene that just makes it seem like such an Iraq war-ass take on un-Americanism. Like, wow, those communists sure do suck. And that's the end of any discussion that could possibly be had about communism. Anti-feminism, or not like other girlism. So when Lucy meets Desi, and this is just the first of her many sins here, he's singing in a movie and he's being hit on by a bunch of chorus girls. They're young and they're pretty and they're really like laying it on thick. And he's kind of riding that fuckboy line of like being interested but keeping him guessing, you know? And Lucy comes into the soundstage in costume and she says something really mysterious and low-key kind of insane to him.
Do you remember the first time we met? You were rudely attentive, but now you're obnoxiously indifferent.
What?
And he's like, wait, who's this mystery woman? But she walks away and he has to be like, okay, back to my fans. Later, she comes back to properly introduce herself and she immediately makes fun of the girls.
I'm Angie, I'm in the chorus. I just want to say when I drink, I take off my clothes. I'm so curious, I have to ask, how did you know Patty was short for Patricia?
Because she's not some stupid little star-eyed chorus girl, even though that's exactly how she started out. She's the sophisticated woman that's gonna capture his heart by also being very forward, but in a classier way than those other girls would have been. And maybe this is something that Aaron Sorkin is okay with his hero saying about other women, because those other girls that he wrote are vapid and silly. They're like literally figments of his imagination. So he's right about whatever he thinks they are, and she's right to say whatever she says that's mean about them. It feels clear to me that he really identifies with Lucy. She's our POV character. To me, it really feels like in this scene, but also in the rest of this movie, she is his character before she's a woman. And then there are all of Lucy's crimes against Vivian Vance, who plays her friend Ethel on the show. I do want to point out that Lucy was against casting her at first because she wanted someone older and frumpier to play Ethel. Vivian Vance was also very rightfully angry when she was cast to be the wife of someone 20 years older than her, and then all his jokes are like, I hate my ugly bitch wife. So I don't know how contentious that was in the first few years of the show, but I do know that because of the show, they became best friends for the rest of their lives, and they loved to gab on set. And I get that Aaron wanted conflict for the movie, but Lucy is almost sociopathic here. Like, I would not associate with someone who treated me like this. And frankly, it does feel like an old white man wrote this, being like, this is how women treat each other, right? Except for Lucy saying out loud once, we're best friends. They are just slightly short of being openly hostile to each other the entire time. Lucy not only refuses to let Vivian wear a dress that makes her look and feel good on the show, but she also notices that Vivian is losing weight and sends someone into her dressing room to comment on her weight and try to feed her French toast. She says it's because of the character, but it's obvious that it's because she wants to be the hot one. She literally says, you need to be relatable, and most of America looks like you and not me. Like, this is not the Lucy I love. They literally have one amicable conversation right at the end where Lucy goes, you know, that really was a pretty banging dress. But she didn't apologize for calling her average looking or cruelly trying to control her weight out of egomaniacal pride. And the only time Lucy actually seems to show vulnerability to a coworker is when she's broing out with the old drunk guy of all people. And they have this whole conversation where she says she's concerned about her marriage. And he basically just says that Desi needs to spend time away from her because she is too in charge and it's emasculating him. Because she's running the set in a show that was literally named after her. you know, like a bitch. He literally says to her, you know, in Cuba, men are in charge, and the women seem to be happier about it. Like this old knows anything about Cuba or women. And appallingly enough, that isn't even my biggest issue with the scene. My issue is, why didn't they give this conversation to Vivian? Like, if we're gonna have a period-appropriate conversation about men's divine roles that isn't further explored at all, let's also be period-appropriate and have her talk about her marriage with her best girlfriend and not her drunk coworker. And it is true that Arnaz probably didn't get enough credit for his work, because I didn't know that he was a studio head or he basically invented multi-camera sitcoms as we know them until I had already seen the show like 5 times over, because he was fundamentally outshone by his wife in the thing that made him a household name. But I feel like Vivian would have also had the sense to be like, well, it's not because you're a hag or anything. And I haven't talked about this yet, but if you haven't seen the show, listen. I genuinely believe that Lucille Ball was one of the most gifted and hardworking comedic performers in recent human history. But when I sit someone down to watch this show, I literally say to them, for the next 25 minutes, women are stupid and their husbands know what's best for them, and play. And to me, one of the most interesting things about Lucille Ball is this dissonance between her being one of the most powerful studio heads of her time, not just among the ladies, but for anyone. She greenlit Star Trek, and then playing this person on stage who doesn't know how to manage her own money, doesn't know how to be on her own, literally gets spanked by her husband, and is essentially treated as another child that Ricky has to take care of. And I have always wondered, was she cool with that? Or did Philip Morris, the cigarette company that sponsored their show, which did happen, prefer that the writers kept her dumb? In the movie, she's like shocked to learn that her character is stupid, which frankly should be pretty obvious for someone as smart as she was. Lucy in the movie does have a point. Of her and Desi, who are always playing off each other, she is the physical comedian. She is amazing at playing the buffoon, and Ricky is her straight man. And it just sucks because of the patriarchy and writing that it had to be so gendered. But then at the end, she tells maybe the younger female writer, well, I don't care what younger generations like you feel about my character. And she doesn't say it out loud, but it does kind of feel like she's thinking, you know, like, snowflake ass, I do what I want. Which I wouldn't blame on Aaron, except he doesn't believe in writing unions, so I am unfortunately gonna blame everything on Aaron. But on the other hand, this movie was executive produced by both of Lucy's kids, so I kind of have to assume that they had final approval on how this movie made their mom look sometimes. Because frankly, they are old and rich enough to hate communists, young actresses, unions, and the youth in general. So maybe they were like, yep, she totally controlled her best friend's diet, and that's something we want all of America to know about her. Maybe I am being the grouchy person here, but I am of the mind that if you are going to make a biography of an incredibly beloved person, everything they do that makes them look kind of bad should be verifiable. So if she actually did all that stuff, you know, listen, I'm sure she wasn't an angel. You kind of don't want to learn about anyone born before like 1975. But if she didn't, why are you making her look like this type of person? A brief interlude. The style. First of all, maybe I'm not the right person to talk about the more subjective stylistic choices because I am so connected to the material. Like, I did watch the show religiously as a child. So to me, it was like watching your parents or like the Teletubbies make out and call each other assholes and stuff. I think Nicole Kidman did a phenomenal job. Like, yes, she is doing an impression, but she's also showing another side of this sharply intelligent, no-nonsense head honcho that fully knows she is the most powerful person in every room she's in. One thing that really struck me was that her hands seemed very 50s. Maybe it's just the acrylics, but she's doing these like graceful hand movements that seem really hard to imitate, but very easy to pin down as of this era and more specifically of this person. Javier Bardem is also insane as Desi Arnaz. I guess I didn't realize how closely familiar you could be with the way a person plays a conga drum until I saw someone else do it, and I was like, no, that's exactly it. For the times he was either performing as Ricky or he was in the nightclub, he was just straight up copying Desi Arnaz, which makes total sense. That's his outward persona. He doesn't need any Meisner-ass nonsense to know how he would have looked. But even in the times where no one could have known what Arnaz said or did, I could tell that he was still using the show to inform his movements. Specifically, there was a time where he and Lucy were arguing and he was getting really frustrated and he just grabs his face in a way that I'd seen on the show when Ricky gets frustrated. Both of them were so excellent at using these two people's widely known performances on this show to inform how they might have moved and behaved in private. Everyone's character is built on someone's real humanity, so they're just filtering out the comedy to get to the truth of how these people like lit cigarettes and opened doors and called their husband a cheater. And I think that's brilliant. The movie was also, heavily dramatized, not very funny. It is Aaron Sorkin, and he's definitely Aaron Sorkinified the lives of these people. I feel like the whole movie is, I don't really want to say well written, I don't want to say poorly written, but I just want to say it's written. It's just very dialogue-y, snappy, and people kind of talk in themes in a way that famously no one does in real life. Because real people don't just have monologues that summarize their outlook on life, what they feel their place in the world is, their concise opinions of who they are as a person. Even if you wanted to do that, it would always come out a little more indelicate. Also, the whole premise of the movie is that it happens in this very dramatic week. There's the whole communism thing, there's the cheating thing, but everyone in the movie keeps going, like, almost to a hilarious extent, like, what a week, huh? Some weeks are just not our week. Just gotta survive the week. Man, what a crazy week to be having these feelings. And in kind of the same vein, it's not exactly difficult to pick up on any of the themes. Like, yeah, they certainly are theming. The most interesting concept that I think the movie touches on is how Lucy is so important and so rich and so powerful, but she and Desi only get to be a normal couple on the show. And he's only faithful to her on the show. And in the exact way that got Aaron a masterclass, he wraps that up in a really bittersweet way at the end of the movie. And honestly, it does scratch that part of my brain that wants life to be that simple. Like, even if I am unhappy sometimes, at least I know that my problems relate to my core wound as a character and serve a distinct narrative purpose. Then maybe I could get off the Lexapro, because at least I know what my fucking problem is. Finally, the joy. Or lack thereof. Once, I was talking to someone who had met another famous person that I grew up watching, Tina Fey. And when you've heard enough about rich and famous people, which I know we all have, you're like really afraid to ask if they're nice. But I literally couldn't resist. Like, when I meet someone who's met Tina Fey, it's like I was a Nazi looking at the Ark of the Covenant. Like, it's just so important to me that I need to know. And he said, yeah, she was nice, but she was also really just casually funny, incredibly dry and quick, exactly like you'd expect her to be. I was so happy to know that this character I grew up watching on The Weekend Update and 30 Rock wasn't a complete fabrication. But also, like, of course she's funny and dry and sardonic. She is not Liz Lemon, but Liz Lemon is made of her. And I think that's the same with any actor. Dramatically, I think that all of the actors in this movie had it down. And here, to me, is the crux of the matter. More importantly than frickin' how mean she is to Vivian, that I cannot excuse.
I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at animal cruelty.
You can excuse racism.
Is that there's no joy here. We know that Lucy was a hard worker. We know her life wasn't some big farce, and that she probably had to perform when she felt terrible, or when she was very pregnant, or knowing that her husband was cheating on her. But in spite of all that, there is so much joy in her performances. Call me a romantic, but I genuinely think that someone like that would have taken a little bit of joy everywhere they went. I implore you, when this video is over, to go look up the Vitameatavegumen scene or the grape stomping scene and try to keep them from making your day just a little better, because you can't do it.
It's so tasty, too. Just like candy.
I'm not sure Nicole Kidman ever actually smiles in this movie, and she never really laughs. I genuinely love this show. It brings me so much joy, it makes me laugh so much, and I think that it's crazy that there isn't an actual moment of levity in the whole movie. Nicole Kidman is great, Javier Bardem is great, all of the supporting actors are great, but even Buster Bluth is being a serious actor in a serious movie. And I'm sorry, but I've spent enough time around people who do comedy to know that these people were likely always doing bits, probably at very inappropriate times. It's easy to tell that Aaron Sorkin took liberties with his source material to make his script better, like Lucy brainstorming the famous grape stomping scene, even though that wouldn't be shot until 3 years later.
What can happen in Nevada grapes? What can she do? Lucy.
Just hang on. She loses an earring
Yes.
There it is.
What are you talking about?
in the grapes.
Even if Lucy and Vivian Vance were fighting at this time, I don't think it would hurt to actually have them be a little nice to each other. And the same could be said of Lucy, like even if she was having a hard time, like couldn't we have seen her character smile or be happy like once? There are so many flashbacks in this movie, but even when she meets her husband for the first time, she's just kind of like coolly disconnected and monologuing about how her career has peaked. I do think it's pretty well known that Lucy liked to be rehearsed, but this version of Lucy approaches comedy like a surgeon, digging into her mind palace like BBC Sherlock, robotically announcing her brilliant ideas like finger on cheek Steve Jobs style. And I know I'm totally being that guy right now, but I saw a Letterboxd review that I really agreed with, which is that comedy is so physical and intuitive, almost doesn't even benefit from analysis. There are people out there that I am, not even joking, really jealous of because they seem to have clownery in their bones. And watching Lucille Ball trying to fit 80 chocolates in her mouth, I have to believe that she was one of those people. There is absolutely no way you could watch this scene and think, oh, this is razor sharp precision here. She knew exactly what was gonna happen at every moment and is approaching this with the cool calculation of a TV detective. Physical comedy takes adaptability, and to do it well, it takes magnetism. The version of Lucy we see in this movie is a quote-unquote strong woman, but I just don't see that twinkle. So obviously normally I like to try to wrap up things in a bit of a more cohesive way, but I was talking to one of my friends, my good friends last night, and she just made a really excellent point that felt like a better conclusion, which is the thing that bugs us the most about people trying to make drama out of comedy, especially comedy that is like this good and brings this much joy and has brought this much joy for, 70 years now, is that it doesn't need any more analysis to be better than what it is. This is its final form. It doesn't need to be anything more than this, because this is more than anyone needs. I've kind of felt the same about like the Avatar live action. The Last Airbender is one of my maybe 3 favorite shows, and I didn't even have any interest in watching the live action because I was like, well, I've already seen the best version of this, so why should I spend my time watching an adaptation that simply like isn't going to be as good? And I think that's what kind of gets to me when people try to dramatize a comedy, is it feels like they want the comedy to be more than it is. They want their lives to mean more than the silly show that they put on TV. But like, the silly show is maybe one of the best shows ever. I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of hubris in the decision to make something more out of I Love Lucy, because how can you? It is everything that it needs to be. So sorry that sirens are gonna be the end of this video, but I liked this point a lot better, so bye. If you got to the end of this, thank you so much for sticking around. I appreciate it. And you know what? I'm going to be genuine and honest, and I'm gonna say that if you liked the video, I would really appreciate it if you were to like the video. And if you want to see more, please do subscribe, because it does help quite a bit. So thank you so much. Bye.